Welcome back, deep divers. You ready for another deep dive?
Always ready.
Okay, so today we're looking at cerebral Doppler ultrasound in infants.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, we got this research review from April 2023, Ultrasound in Medicine and Biology.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently we can tell a lot more from these Doppler waveforms than just like flow or no flow.
Absolutely.
It's like we've been, listening to the notes but not really hearing the music.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like just scratching the surface. And this review really digs into how much information is actually there.
Okay, well, I'm ready to dig in. How about you?
Let's do it.
All right, so before we completely lose everyone, let's start with the basics. For those who haven't spent much time with sonograms, what exactly is Doppler ultrasound and how does it work?
So imagine using sound waves to see inside the body.
Okay.
That's essentially what ultrasound is.
Right.
With Doppler ultrasound, we're bouncing these high-frequency sound waves specifically off of blood cells. And as those blood cells move, the frequency of the sound waves changes depending on if they're coming towards the probe or away from the probe.
Oh, interesting.
And we can actually visualize those changes as waveforms, giving us a real-time picture of blood flow.
Oh, that's cool. So it's kind of like those motion-activated lights. The closer you get, the faster they blink.
Yeah.
It means something's moving nearby.
That's a great analogy. Now imagine that same concept, but instead of motion, we're seeing blood flow in the brain, all thanks to those little squiggles.
Those squiggles tell us a lot.
They do. And the best part is Doppler ultrasound is incredibly safe. No radiation, which is why it's perfect for use with infants, especially those tiny humans in the NICU.
Right, because even a simple X-ray has risks associated with it, especially for those developing babies.
Exactly.
So focusing on infants then, why is Doppler ultrasound so valuable for this age group? I mean, it's got to be more than just safety, right?
Oh, absolutely. Infants have that soft spot on their heads, the fontanelle.
Right.
It's like a window for the ultrasound waves to pass through. We get these clear images of the brain without having to deal with the skull, which is a lot tougher to get through in older children and adults.
It's like a built-in sunroof for peeking into their neural activity.
Exactly. And because ultrasound machines are portable, we can use them right there at the bedside, even during surgery if we need to.
Wow. Talk about having a window into such a critical part of the body.
I know, right?
But for a long time, doctors were really focused on specific numbers from these Doppler ultrasounds, things like the resistance index or RI.
Yeah.
But it sounds like, based on this research, we've been missing a bigger piece of the puzzle.
We have. It's like we've been so focused on, how many beats per minute a song has that we've ignored the melody, the instruments, the emotion.
Oh, yeah.
This research found that the shape of the waveform itself, those peaks and valleys, tells a much richer story about what's going on in the brain.
So it's like how the same musical note can sound completely different on a piano versus a violin. Same note, different feeling.
Precisely. And that's where this visual analysis of the Doppler spectrum comes in. This review actually included visual examples of these different waveforms from healthy infants compared to infants with various conditions.
Okay, let's see if I can learn to read the music here.
Mm-hmm.
What does a healthy waveform look like?
You're looking for a nice, gentle, rolling wave. Smooth peak, a nice rounded diastolic flow that's the heartbeat of a healthy brain.
All right, I'm picturing it. Now, what happens to that wave when something's off? Let's say a baby has asphyxia, where they're not getting enough oxygen. How does that show up in the waveform?
Asphyxia is interesting because it can actually cause those waveforms to go in two different directions.
Really?
So we might see increased flow, what we call luxury perfusion. That's where the brain tries to compensate by increasing blood flow. Or we might see the opposite, decreased flow, as the brain tries to conserve energy. It all depends on how severe it is and what stage the condition is in.
So it's like the brain is saying, emergency mode, we need more blood flow, or everything's shutting down, conserve resources.
Right.
And we can see all of that just from those little waves.
Exactly. And each condition we see has its own unique effect on those waveforms. For example, let's look at patent ductus arteriosus, or PDA.
Okay, PDA, got it.
Yeah.
What is that again?
PDA is a heart defect that's common in premature babies. Basically, it causes what we call diastolic steal. So imagine the diastolic flow that's that lower part of the wave getting much smaller or even reversing direction. Essentially, blood that should be going to the brain gets diverted away.
So the brain isn't getting what it needs. That sounds pretty scary.
It can be, but that's why monitoring those waveforms is so important. By listening to those changes, we can understand how serious the situation is and how the baby's brain is coping.
So it's like the waveforms are trying to tell us, hey, something's wrong. Pay attention.
Exactly.
You mentioned hydrocephalus earlier, where there's a buildup of fluid in the brain. What kind of tune does that play on these brain waves?
Hydrocephalus usually shows up as decreased diastolic flow, again, that lower part of the wave, but this time it's paired with increased pulsatility.
Okay, hold on. We keep using this word pulsatility. For those of us who don't speak fluent Doppler, what does that even mean?
Good point. Pulsatility basically describes how much the blood flow pulses with each heartbeat. Think of a garden hose with a really weak flow versus one with a strong pulsing flow.
Okay.
That's essentially what we're looking at. In hydrocephalus, the pressure from all that extra fluid makes the pulsing a lot more pronounced in the waveforms. It's like the music's getting louder, more intense.
Wow, it's amazing how each condition leaves its own little fingerprint on these waveforms.
Like each one's got its own song.
Exactly. But doesn't a single snapshot of these waveforms just give us a tiny glimpse into what's actually a constantly changing system?
It does.
I mean, what about the baby's movements, their sleep cycles, even just breathing? Wouldn't those things affect the readings?
Absolutely. A single measurement is like listening to one note of a song. You get some information, but not the whole picture. And you're right, all sorts of things can affect the readings. A baby's movements, their sleep cycle, even just taking a breath. That's one of the limitations of a lot of studies. They've relied on these isolated snapshots. But this is where the real-time continuous monitoring of Doppler ultrasound really shines.
So instead of hearing a single note, we want to be able to listen to the entire melody to understand the full story.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Now, I see some notes here about ultra-fast Doppler and functional ultrasound. What are those all about?
Think of them like going from a basic microscope to an electron microscope. Ultrafast Doppler lets us create these 2D maps of blood flow across the entire brain. It's like seeing the entire orchestra at once instead of just one instrument.
So we're seeing blood flow in different regions of the brain all at the same time.
Exactly. And functional ultrasound takes it a step further. We can see how that blood flow changes in response to brain activity. It's like watching the brain light up as different areas become active.
Wow. So we're not just looking at blood vessels anymore. We're seeing the brain in action.
You got it.
Yeah.
And it's all happening in real time, right there at the bedside. Incredible possibilities for understanding how that infant brain develops functions and responds to different things.
This field is just amazing. It seems like it's changing so quickly.
It really is. There's always something new to learn.
There always is. So what else is new and exciting in the world of Doppler ultrasound?
Well, this review actually mentioned a new tool called Doppler.
New Doppler. What is that? Is that like a Star Trek thing?
It sounds pretty futuristic, right? It's a really cool and new technology that uses this tiny coin-shaped probe that just sits comfortably on the baby's head, and it continuously sends back data on blood flow.
So much less invasive than some of the other monitoring methods.
Way less invasive.
Yeah.
And think of what we can do with continuous monitoring. We could monitor those babies for days, even weeks, giving us so much data on brain activity.
That's incredible.
I know.
But with all this incredible technology, there have to be some challenges too, right? I mean, this review mentioned needing more standardized terminology and research protocols. What do they mean by that?
You're right. There are always challenges when a field is moving this quickly. One big one is that different researchers use different terms to describe the same waveform features. Or they'll calculate things in slightly different ways, and that makes it tough to compare results from different studies.
So it's like everybody's speaking a slightly different language,
Exactly.
and then it's hard to understand each other.
It can be.
The review also suggested needing more comprehensive reporting in those research studies. What kind of details are we talking about there?
It's all about making sure things are transparent and reproducible. So things like reporting the specifics of the ultrasound equipment, the scanning procedures, used even the position of the baby's head during the scan.
Those things matter.
They do. These details might seem small, but they can actually have a big impact on the ultrasound readings.
So it's kind of like providing a detailed recipe, so other people can replicate what you did and verify the results.
Exactly.
Makes sense. So
Yeah.
it's really a call for better research overall.
Absolutely. More rigorous and transparent, which ultimately benefits everyone.
Right, because then we know we're working with reliable data.
Exactly.
This has been so interesting. We've gone from decoding these squiggly lines to basically mapping brain activity in real time. It's incredible how far this technology has come.
It really is incredible. And we're just getting started.
It's really amazing to think that we can get all this information about what's going on in a baby's brain, all with just sound waves.
I know, right? It really highlights how much we can learn just from observing these natural processes.
Absolutely. And the potential applications of this go way beyond just, figuring out if something's wrong.
Yeah.
We could use this to understand how a healthy brain develops over time.
Exactly. Imagine being able to actually see how a baby's brain responds to different sounds or sights or even social interactions. We could learn so much about how those early experiences shape brain development.
It would be fascinating to see, how a baby's brain reacts to hearing their mother's voice for the first time or seeing a familiar face.
Absolutely. We could see which areas of the brain are involved, how those blood flow patterns change, and how all of that evolves as the baby grows and learns.
It's like opening up a whole new window into how humans develop.
Exactly.
And this isn't just limited to research labs, right? This technology could have a real impact on how we care for infants, especially in clinical settings like the NICU.
Absolutely. Think about it. If we had access to continuous Doppler monitoring in the NICU, we could start to personalize care for each baby based on their own unique brain activity.
So instead of just having like a standard protocol, you'd be able to tailor the interventions and even the baby's environment to their specific neurological needs.
Precisely. We could adjust the light levels, the sound levels, sleep schedules, even feeding routines, all based on what the baby's brain is telling us.
That's incredible. It's like we could create a completely personalized care plan for each baby.
Exactly. And we could potentially identify subtle signs of stress or discomfort that we might have missed, otherwise allowing us to intervene earlier and provide better, more supportive care.
It's really amazing to think about how far we've come. From just measuring that resistance index to now being able to map brain activity in real time.
It's incredible how far this technology has come in such a short time.
It really is. And it seems like this research review is really emphasizing the need for a more long-term perspective. Most of the studies that have been done so far have really focused on using Doppler ultrasound to understand specific conditions or interventions. But what about the bigger picture? What about looking at how the brain develops over time?
That's a really important point. We've been so focused on looking at individual trees that we've forgotten about the entire forest.
Exactly. What if we could use this technology to track brain development over time, not just in the NICU, but throughout infancy and beyond?
Imagine being able to create personalized growth charts for brain development, just like we have for a baby's height and weight. We could track how those blood flow patterns change as they learn new skills, as they hit those developmental milestones, as they interact with the world around them.
That would be amazing, not only for understanding what typical brain development looks like, but also for identifying early signs of developmental delays or disorders.
Absolutely. If we could identify those subtle variations in brain development early on, we could start interventions and therapies much sooner, which could make a huge difference in the long run.
And because Doppler ultrasound is so safe and portable and relatively inexpensive, it could potentially be used in widespread screening and early intervention programs. This could have a huge impact on early childhood development and education.
Absolutely. It's truly groundbreaking. This is what I find so exciting about this field, the sheer potential of this technology to completely transform how we understand the infant brain and how we approach early childhood development.
It's really incredible to think that we're just scratching the surface of what we can learn about the brain and how it develops.
I know it's such a complex organ, but these tools like Doppler ultrasound are giving us this incredible glimpse into how it all works.
And to think it all started with these little squiggly lines, those Doppler waveforms. They're like these little windows into this whole symphony of activity that's happening inside a baby's head.
It's like we're listening to the brain's own soundtrack, learning to recognize those melodies, the harmonies, the rhythms that make each brain unique.
And as we get better at understanding this language, this Doppler code, we can start to do so much more to support healthy brain development, identify potential issues earlier, and maybe even personalize their care and education in ways that we never thought possible before.
It's a completely new way of thinking about early childhood development, and it has the potential to really change lives.
It really does. It's like we have this powerful new tool now, and it's up to all of us to use it wisely to help every child reach their full potential.
Absolutely. It's a responsibility that we all share. Scientists, clinicians, educators, parents. We need to work together to make sure that this technology is used ethically and effectively for the benefit of all children.
Well, I think that's a perfect place to leave it for today. It's been amazing having you on the show today. Thank you so much for taking the time to break all of this down for us.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for another deep dive into the fascinating world of, well, everything. We'll see you next time.